I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Francisco. Hart. Here. Hotchkiss. Here. Murillo.
Here.
Rouse. White. Here. Mayor Snyder.
Here. Item number 1.
Proclamation declaring October 2015 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Color me pink.
You just look to see who's pink in the room, and they'll be on, kind of on. You could come over here, Rosemary, too. Have your pink on. Great. Come on over. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and in the United States, 1 out of 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and an estimated 211,240 new cases of female breast cancer were diagnosed in 2009. And mammography can detect cancer long before physical symptoms can be seen or felt. It is the most effective method of detecting breast changes that may be cancer. Seroptimists are in a position worldwide to educate everyone, especially women, that they have the right to feel safe and to live free from violence at home and in the workplace, and that they have access to breast cancer prevention information and services. The Seroptimist Workplace Campaign to promote breast cancer awareness is an ongoing effort to promote awareness, advocacy, and action. And Seroptimist is an international volunteer organization for business and professional women who work to improve the lives of women and girls in local communities, and throughout the world has launched a region-wide campaign called Color Me Pink for breast cancer. So therefore, I, Helene Schneider, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, California, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And thank you for the work that you do. Come on over here if you'd like to.
Yes, I would.
Great. Thank you. And actually,
all right. So my name is Donalyn Karpelis. I've been a Seroptimist for about 13 years. And one of the things that our organization does is we make these comfort kits, which is we give to women who are going in for a mastectomy. One of the things is a signature T-shirt, which you can say it has Velcro, makes it easy on and off. We have little pillows when you have to put on your seatbelt. There's a variety of things in here. When we get letters from women who have come out of the hospital after this horrible ordeal, they say how much they appreciate receiving this, because it shows that not just family members but other women out there care about what they're going through. So I do have pamphlets for each of you so you can look and see what we do. And I know the mayor and Kathy Muro has been at our meetings when we had our awards we give out to women. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much for the proclamation. Our group really appreciates it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the work that you do. Okay, any changes to the agenda? Nope. Okay, we have public comment. We have a couple of speaker slips here. We'll start with Phil Walker and then Clint Orr. I'm sorry, Mr. Orr, you're on the airport master plan, so I'm going to call you up for that point. That's okay. So after Phil Walker, it'll be Richard Robinson.
Sometimes timing is everything. I was very happy to see Mayor Garcetti of LA approving his seismic retrofit plan for soft story and non-ductile concrete buildings. I think this city should get on it a little bit more than they have. Going back to the 80s, they did retrofit the State Street area and the URM unreinforced masonry buildings, but a lot of things have sort of been out of sight, out of mind. Okay, but then a page following, Governor Brown announces he will not expand the seismic retrofit tax credit options. And again, it was a case of poor timing more than anything. Essentially, he said the funding is just not there, but possibly they could put off the bullet train a little bit. And one other thing about timing, you know, I had occasion to go back to the Green Valley development on Punta Gorda on the sweep right adjacent to Sycamore Creek again. You know, and those workers are working hard. The project manager, Bill, is a very capable gentleman, and he lays it out. You know, it is what it is. He's working per the specs, schematics, and, you know, in a severe seismic event and/or tsunami, those places will probably still be there. Thank you very much.
Richard Robinson will be followed by Dr. Robert Johns.
Honorable Mayor, members, President Obama says global warming is a sin. Ma'am, a sin. Governor Brown says we can stop global warming and reverse its effect. Because the solution to the problem of global warming was determined by scientists at Kyoto, Japan in 1997, the Kyoto Protocols were established. ICE, the internal combustion engine. ICE, in 1960, on the campus, University of Michigan, that was a bumper sticker that ICE, the internal combustion engine. I was preaching to the choir. You know the solution. In Katrina was caused by a 0.5 degree rise in the temperatures of the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Why? Those who are geniuses, scientists, meteorologists, are suggesting that we replace the internal combustion engine. How? Electric automobiles. Set up at a complete. It's an established fact. Kyoto, Japan, Kyoto Protocols told us Detroit can be returned to full vitality by built. We need not preach to the choir. We get rid of the internal combustion engine by what? Producing hundreds of millions of automobiles which are electric. Let's look at the Buick being produced in Detroit. Thank you.
Robert Johns.
Who that is?
Today I want to bring attention to the board of chief of police. We all know the issues here, but to insult to injury, the chief ordered one of his men, police officer, to go to LAX and pick up his daughter. Now, this is serious abuse of police powers. And now I have another one I want to report is that the assistant chief, Mannix, is teaching tennis at municipal tennis courts. Now, is there a form that every officer must sign a form that says what he's doing outside of his employment? If there's no form, I would like to have one built so that you know what they're doing outside of their employment. And, of course, there's no way to catch the chief. He's fly old fox. He's going to cheat any way you want to cheat. But I know this board is so magnanimous. See, the chief will come here and he'll have his he's going to crying sympathy. He's going to have that patch over his head and crying sympathy. And I know this board won't do anything about it, but I at least want to report that this is serious abuse. And I think that you should do something about it. Thank you very much.
That concludes public comment. Move on to the consent calendar. There's an item to read.
Memorandum of Understanding with the City of Goleta for a runway protection zone analysis.
Thank you. And I know that item has been asked to bring up, so Mr. Hotchkiss, and we do have a public comment speaker slip on that. Item 3. Go ahead.
You have public comment on that?
Yes, but do you want that first?
No, let's hear the staff report on this. This is informational. I think it'll be helpful for everybody.
So did you have you just asked for a staff report on this item? Okay. Go right ahead then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I'm Andrew Bermond, the project planner for the airport, and I'm going to talk to you about the item before you, which is a proposed memorandum of understanding between the cities of Santa Barbara and Goleta in order to prepare a runway protection zone impact analysis for a proposed roadway project. So I'll talk briefly about what a runway protection zone is, because that's a little bit of aviation planning jargon. And I'll talk about the proposed project by the city of Goleta, what an impact analysis entails, and a little bit about the memorandum of understanding. First, a runway protection zone is a critical safety area at the immediate end of a commercial runway. That its specific dimensions and uses permissible within it are governed by federal guidance. That's that long list of numbers and letters over there. But to summarize, it discourages any development that it be free and clear of obstacles to the maximum extent possible. The FAA encourages airport ownership of the land, and previous to an update in 2012, the FAA permitted or tolerated parking lot uses in an RPZ. That was closed in 2012 with the update to the advisory circular. And essentially the only uses that are permissible by right are agriculture and open space. So the city of Goleta proposes to extend James Fowler Road. That's the road that connects Fairview to Moffett Place and the airline terminal. To extend it through the runway protection zone and into city of Goleta jurisdiction, where it would extend to the southern terminus of Kellogg Avenue. They would put a roundabout in at the intersection of Fowler and Fairview. And as you can see here, there's a good portion of the project that would be in the city of Santa Barbara is also in this runway protection zone. This is part of a larger project that the city of Goleta is trying to accomplish. That's the Equal Fowler project. That's the extension of Equal Street through Old Town Goleta and the improvements at Hollister 217 interchange. You may recall this originally involved traffic lights on Highway 217 at both Equal and Fowler, but those were removed a while ago in the project description at the request of the university. So the runway protection zone impact analysis looks at three different components to a proposed project and how that might affect a runway protection zone and safety within it. The first is accident probability. Is the project likely to change the frequency or severity of any aviation accident? The second is the locational probability. Is that place at the end of the runway uniquely prone or disprone to an aircraft accident or any other safety problems? And then the consequences of the development, whether it's the extension of a runway that causes an incursion into an RPZ or a new project proposed in an RPZ. You need to look at what the consequences are of adding that development within that trapezoid. Excuse me. And another component of an RPZ impact analysis is to consider alternatives. The alternatives are intentionally broad and incorporate a number of things that many people would dismiss at the beginning. The first being avoidance of the RPZ, routing around that zone. Another is tunneling through an RPZ, which might be difficult given the low elevation. Relocating the runway protection zone is also an option that would likely involve the shortening of runway 725, which would have commercial aviation impacts. And there's also not constructing the project. And so we need to flesh out the pros and cons of each of those and look at other alternatives that might be brought up as we go through the process. So the memorandum of understanding is to facilitate the city hiring an aviation planning firm to conduct the analysis. The city of Goleta would reimburse the city for that cost up to $100,000. The city of Goleta would retain the right to terminate the MOU, and the city of Santa Barbara would then use the information that comes out of that impact analysis in making its decisions as to what to do with the project. And this is before you today. Will be before the Goleta City Council next Tuesday. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hotchkiss, did you have any specific questions? No. Okay. Clint Orr, you're welcome to come up. And I know we have representation here from the City of Goleta here to answer questions. Thank you for taking the time to come. Mr. Orr?
Yeah, Mayor Schneider, council members, Clint Orr here. And I have some public comments for the Santa Barbara Airport master plan, which I'm planning to turn in today and email some PDFs. Once upon a time, there was a lonely airport. Lonely Airport huffed and puffed to expand and improve services, but the people cared not. Carriers left for greener pastures, travelers bailed to faraway airports. Lonely Airport's Amtrak friend was sad too, for no one wanted to stay and play past State Street. Sad Amtrak's end of the line sat empty, for nothing was nearby. Why fly to your fine airport, or travel by rail to Goleta, when nothing is there, the good people would say. Along came our hero Clint with a plan to increase passenger count by creating a family-friendly entertainment destination called the Airport Honky Tonk. A world-class country dance hall run by a nonprofit must be built at the northeast corner of Hollister and Lopez, the old drive-in, says Clint. Locals cheered as bands, students, vacationers, and dancers came from around the world for healthy, happy habitat to learn to dance and practice couples dance. Floundering hotels hired new staff as occupancies jumped from visitor demand as Clint's plan drove adjacent businesses to create a theme park atmosphere. Folks in cowboy hats suddenly flocked from Texas and New York to marvel at the biggest dance hall on the West Coast. Bands have a place to play. Dancers and DJs get meaningful employment. Teens and college students have dedicated habitat to meet, learn dance and manners, and get off their phones. Lonely Airport wasn't lonely anymore. Sad Amtrak had thousands of new friends. The end. This is not a fairy tale. It's the highest and best use of the property. The way it's designed is to have it close to the public before 7. So it's not open to the public till 7 p.m., so the impact on traffic is minimized. Thank you. And I have a great deal of information to attach and present for you folks. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that was more public comment than about the runway proposal, so my apologies for that. Mr. Hart, did you have a question?
Question and a comment?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I understand that this is complicated, and I appreciate that the airport staff is looking out to protect the interests of the airport in relationship to the FAA. But reading through the staff report, there's definitely some history here that makes this awkward, and I imagine staff appreciates that. Being in support of this project early on, 10 years ago, giving Goleta the encouragement, or maybe just tacit support to go ahead, having the rules be changed by the FAA. But the staff report even kind of speaks to the city coming at this from two different perspectives, and I just kind of want to resolve that, I think, in my mind. It sounds as though there's the incursion of the road into the airport runway zone, and then there's the implication in the staff report that part of the concern is about facilitating development of parcels that are adjacent to the runway protective zone. And it doesn't seem to me that we can have it both ways in that regard. If we were originally supportive of the extension of the road, it seems like we would have addressed that issue about encouraging development in this zone at that point in time, and that maybe the objection would have just been to the extension of the road. But Fairview exists, and this increase of the road is not a lot. And in the context of the other point being that there's sort of an implication that the city of Goleta had a choice between an option that would require acquisition of private property versus using airport property. It just seems to me like we're all over the place, and I think fundamentally that's the problem for the city of Goleta, is where are we coming from this? And I imagine that we do have an agreement with the city of Goleta to go forward with this, and everybody's on board with getting this additional information. But I'm concerned that this additional information is going to come back gray too, and we're going to be at the same place. So I just would encourage everybody to get to a place of resolution about, is this a significant incursion in this runway protective zone? There's an existing road that's there now. There's existing development that's there now. I just hope we don't continue to keep sending mixed messages.
Okay, does anyone need to vote on this separately, or is there a motion for the consent calendar?
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Francisco, second by Rouse. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. On to report from the Ordinance Committee, Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Ordinance Committee met today to discuss ZIR process improvements and discuss them at quite length and detail, and we will be forwarding those improvement proposals on to the Planning Commission, which will then eventually circle back to the full council for review.
Great, thank you. Okay, item number 6.
Police Department update.
Great. Good to see you, Chief. Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, City Council. We're going to give you our latest department update. We have quite a few things to talk about, so we're going to try to be prompt about it and leave you time for questions, of course. We have some challenges we're going to talk about, specifically on staffing, some of the things that we're doing to make some changes to make sure that we continue our great work in the community in terms of response times and all those things that are important to you and to me, and certainly to our residents in terms of public safety. So I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy Chief. I've been out for a few days, as you know, and my staff has done a great job, so you're going to hear very little from me unless you address me one-on-one, but I'm going to let them do the presentation for me today, and I'll jump in from time to time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. Frank Mannix from the Police Department. Today's presentation is going to follow the following format. We'll first hear from Admin Services, next Patrol, Investigative Division. We'll get a CompStat Violent Crime and Property Crime update, and then we'll hold a short question and answer period for you. So we'll kick it right off going into Admin Services. Captain Gil Torres. Take it away, Gil.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, City Council members. Captain Gil Torres. I'm in charge of Administrative Services Division, and I'll be talking to you today about our hiring efforts and some things going on in the police facility. Go ahead and start. I'm going to start by showing a video that we worked with City TV on a recruitment video to target our local candidates.
I grew up here. I've made memories here, and I love being able to drive around knowing that this is my community. I'm helping my community.
We care, and we want to make this community a better place.
This career is for someone who wants to be challenged deep down inside to better a community.
But it's the best job in the world. It really is. It's like a dream come true. Join your home team.
Yeah, we developed that to target the local applicants. We showed that at the movie theaters for 3 weeks prior to our testing, and we're going to plan on doing that. We're also working with City TV to expand that to develop a more comprehensive one for our webpage, because we found out that a lot of the candidates the internet's is real big in their job searches, and most departments have some type of recruitment video, so we're going to incorporate that into there. I'll start with this first slide. It's kind of depicting some of the testing trends that we've seen over the last several years. And it shows where it starts jumping significantly in 2010, where that's when we had an economic downturn, and we were one of the few agencies in the state that were hiring police officers. So with that, we saw a huge influx of applicants. And you see the blue marks as far as the applicants. It's abnormally high. It's because a lot of times that's because the applicants are able to apply online, and it's not uncommon for a lot of these candidates to apply for multiple agencies, because pretty much everybody has that method of receiving applications. So we received quite a bit, but as you see, only a few of those, well, I should say a few, but a small percentage of those actually show up the day of the testing to actually take the test. So we see our numbers, they go up to, as far as showing up, our peak was at 926, and we've seen an ongoing reduction over the years. And to this year, we just finished our last testing in September, and that number was 346. And I can give you some stats after that. Of that number that actually applied, we had, and then let me explain, that's actually represents 2 tests a year. So it's not all 1 year, so we'll split it up. We split up the test two times a year to kind of coincide with our academies that begin in April and October. So this last test, we tested 182 people showed up. 65 actually passed the process, and so that's the pool we're working with right now. And our target area is going to be 19 officers to hire, which is going to be quite a challenge. Some of the projections for the next 6 months. Let me give you a little background. The last 12 months, we've had 8 officers lateral to different departments. We've had several retirements, and we created 14 vacancies. And we recently hired 7 that are just started the academy. They're starting this week, and so we're on target for, we have the next 6 months. We're seeing 8 more projected retirements, and a couple people in background with other agencies to go. So, again, we're going to be at a target of about 19 that we're going to try to fill. As you see from this stat, back in 2013, our target number was 6, and we were able to hire 6. And then we went to 2. We were able to actually hire 3 with overhiring. And then we started seeing a reduction. Our target was 6, and we were only able to hire 2. Left us with 4, and then as you can see, it's progressing. We're having a hard time attracting candidates to the department.
Mr. Francisco has a question.
Yes. So you said there have been several retirements. How many exactly?
I counted in the last 9 months 7, and we're projecting 8 more in the next 6 months.
Is that an unusual number?
Yes, but I attribute to that because I'm included in one of these people. So I attribute to that as in the 80s, there was a heavy push to hire a lot of officers. The department was expanding, from the 120s up to the 150s, and there was a big push. So a lot of us are reaching that retirement age of 50 to 55 years old, and I personally have 32 years of service there. So there's a lot of us in that situation, and then we're finding some of these people earlier. They may not have full 30 years, but they're close. They have 28. There's other opportunities. The Sheriff's Department presents an opportunity where they can go and, they're non-PERS, so they can go work for another agency there. And they offer an opportunity to work in the court system where it's they're not actually working out patrol. It's a more slower environment. So someone, in their 50s will have an easier transition going working in the courts. Same thing with UCSB. They're non-PERS, so people are able to retire from us, go work for UCSB, and double dip, if you call it, and just be able to collect the retirement, go work someplace else. So we're seeing that phenomenon happening right now. So it's creating the numbers for us to try to hire is unprecedented for us, at least in my 7 years here doing this, because we, on average, over the years, we've probably seen we'd hire 7 people, we'd lose 7 people here, and now this is presenting a bigger problem for us now.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Thanks for the explanation.
Sure. So just on the testing process, historically, it's a real rigorous process, as many of you know. So I'll give you an example of this last test. We'll have 65 people that will actually be in our pool. Out of those 65, we haven't even really screened them yet. So maybe we'll invite 60 to do the oral panels. Out of the 60, we have a pass rate of about 25% of those applicants that we actually move into background. So, 1 out of 4 gets moved into background. And out of the background, we have about 1 out of 3 makes it through the background process. And that the background includes a polygraph examination, psychological. It's pretty rigorous. Chief Senator, we look into their job history. So we get about 1 out of 3 out of that. So on that target of 65 people, we're looking at probably offering about 5 to 6 jobs out of that, which is not going to meet our target. So we're looking at other ways to do that. So it's unfortunate. The majority of our applicants we're finding that are not really academically qualified. If we lost just from the written, we lost, quite a few of people just in that portion. We lose, we're stuck with 65 out of 182, so that's a big problem. We use a statewide test, so it's through POST, which is the regulated agency for California law enforcement. So we use a test, and we've switched to that. In the past, we used to have our own city test, but we wanted to give an opportunity where someone who tested with Oxnard or Irvine or Santa Clara, we could use their test scores. They don't have to test with us. We could count their test scores, and we could put them in our process. So it creates an efficiency, and it expands our pool. So they don't have to be here the day of our test. So that's kind of one of the things we've gone to.
Just to follow up on Mr. Francisco's questioning, it'd be great to have, after today, the retirements and especially those, like why, or the exit interview, or why they're leaving, and if they're retiring or they lateral, if they're going to another agency close by, are they at retirement age here or not, and just sort of know, are they all like that, or are there some like that, just to get a sense of that trend. Because we need to plan for that. It seems like if in the 80s we hired a significant number of officers, in the next several years, then we're going to look at that 30-year milestone, and that might change the way we want to look at recruiting in the next couple of years, if that's a trend just solely based on just the age of the department. So that might just be good information to have.
And we keep stats on that for the last several years, so we have it readily available for you.
That would be great. Thank you.
And some of those retirements I may include, they're not all service retirements. Some of them are medical retirements,
Sure.
too, from injuries.
Yeah,
So,
that'd just be good info to have. Mr. Hart?
And I guess it'd be helpful to know, in addition to what the mayor was asking for, is just, what's the plan given this reality? If there's going to be this age cohort that's going to retire and we're having a hard time getting people even to apply, what is plan B?
I'll go into that part of my presentation.
Thank you.
Here. Okay. And you can move. So what we're seeing is the red line represents full staffing for us, and over the years we're finding that we're about 93% of full staffing as a result of these vacancies that we have. And a lot of people ask, well, why are we seeing this? And historically, it's always been challenging to hire police officers. It's pretty rigorous. These hiring standards are difficult. As far as the screening of drug use, job description. There's a lot of things that are demanding. We also put our candidates through very demanding academy, which is Ventura County Sheriff's Academy. We lose people in the academy sometimes too. More recently, the profession's image has been tarnished nationally by, random acts by some officers doing things, and just the media attention that it's getting. And it's not as attractive as a job as it used to be. Plus, we're having higher expectations now. Agencies are, officers are going to be wearing cameras, and they're going to have GPSs on them, and it's just not attracting the numbers as before. We've noticed that, with the improved economy, there's a lot of other job opportunities for, our demographics that we're hiring from with the tech sector, startups. We're looking for the same qualities that they do. Perfect example, I have a daughter who's in this age, and a lot of she has male friends. They grew up here in Santa Barbara, went to local high schools, played sports, and they moved to San Francisco. They're working for LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, and they're making a lot more money, and the chances for advancement are real quicker, and the perks and the facilities. It's just we can't compete with that. So but we're competing with that. So that's part of what I'm seeing in Santa Barbara at least. And again, the internet has changed the way people, they search for jobs. So now they can look at what does Santa Barbara pay as compared to Santa Clara or, Irvine or Newport Beach. It's right at their fingertips. They can compare, they can shop salaries. They can, they can look at MOUs. They can look, and they're a pretty informed group that we're seeing now. They look at the housing. They can go to, Craigslist. What are rentals? What are the housing costs? Because a lot of our candidates, they're looking for a place to work 30 years, raise a family, and so they're going to be real selective where they go. So with the internet, in some ways, it's a little bit to a disadvantage for us because Santa Barbara is an expensive place to live. So we have to, and it's expensive to commute. So, and they come up, we invite them for a ride along because as we're trying to attract these people, they're riding with most of our officers who are living in Camarillo and Oxnard and Ventura. And that's just the reality. That's just something that it's a little bit disadvantage for us. It makes it tough. Okay, and as far as next slide. In our recruitment efforts, some of the ways that we're trying to address this, and some of it's been ongoing, it's not something that's just new that we're trying to do, is we have 2 open tests a year, and we're also, the new thing is we're accepting post-test scores to get more candidates as we can. Working with HR to advertise out, to get as much advertising as we can to get out there. Most of it's internet-based anyway. We have a Facebook page, that we advertise on. We've done an in-house promotional recently that opens it up to all city employees, and we actually got 1 person out of that we're sending to the academy. Working with the recruitment video, we developed some recruitment cards that we're going to make available to basically all city employees, and I have examples. I forgot to bring them today, but basically you could be, at a restaurant and you have a waiter, you notice this person looks like they have the qualities to do that, and say, hey, I'm recommending, that you have what it takes to be a police officer of Santa Barbara Police Department. It has a number to contact and how to move forward with that. And one of the things that was brought up, a lot of agencies, doing research, do have signing bonuses. I know Mr. Kasich suggested that too, because agencies that are having difficult attracting officers, what they do is they have signing bonuses, and they do it for lateral transfers and for new hires, because it's very competitive out there. I mean, I'm competing. I've been accused of stealing candidates from Oxnard, and it's just I've never had to deal with that, but it's getting down to that. And so the signing bonuses we're looking, I know Santa Cruz does it, LAP did it. There's a lot of things. So we'll be coming to council shortly with the proposal on getting that approved by you. And one of the big things that we're going to really start looking into is the lateral, re-examining the lateral list. I know in the past we haven't had much luck with that. Although we lose people, they lateral other places from Santa Barbara. We haven't really had a lot of luck with people, quality people coming lateraling in Santa Barbara. Because usually people that lateral, we find, they go work for a department. They're looking for someplace. Maybe they can't afford to buy a home there, or they're looking for more pay, or just different reasons. We've lost people. They've gone back to Newport Beach or Tustin. That's where they came from, and we're not finding a lot of Santa Barbara people going someplace and coming back to Santa Barbara. Usually, they get hired in Santa Barbara because we have lots of openings for them. But so what we're doing is, and a lot of times, recently I've looked at some of the lateral lists, and a lot of times there are people that are looking to start over again. They made mistakes. They've been disciplined, and their work record's not very well. And most of the time, pretty significant problems where we probably don't want these people. And that's the problem that we're seeing is like they're looking for anybody that'll take them. So they've tried a bunch of other places, and nobody wants to touch some of these, some of them are kind of some serious, disciplinary issues. And so, unfortunately, we've looked at the list, and we've gone to whole list, and we're just like, everybody has issues. And we've even started some in background, and, they've been terminated, just a lot of problems. So we're going to look, we're hoping with signing bonus, some other, issues. Maybe I know the POAs are to be looking at salary negotiations coming up. That's something I think that should be seriously looked at, because I think, on a personal note, I think you've seen other agencies that have recently made adjustments. Ventura Sheriffs, which is historically they were lower paid, they make more money than us now, than our officers, and so it makes it easier from a recruiting standpoint to look at those salary benefit packages, as well as. I think a police facility, because we're bringing these ride-alongs in to police facilities. They've gone to road with other departments, and Santa Barbara, ours is more substandard compared to a lot of the agencies that they're going around and visiting, and that's important to some of these new people looking for a place to go to. Employees can't park here and facilities, so I'm just trying to be honest about some of the challenges that I have to deal with. So, any other questions on that? Yeah.
Before we move to the next slide, we have had some luck, but very little luck with laterals. Probably 2 or 3 in the 15 years I've been here that have come from other departments. We have lost some to other departments who have come back as well. They thought it was greener on the other side and decided to come back. I don't take them all back, but they reapply. We do another background, even though they were here for years. Somehow they thought it was the right decision. They changed their mind. We felt they were great employees. We brought them back after another background. There have been some that have left us and wanted to come back, and we didn't take them back. And this is happening around the state, and we continue to meet that challenge as best we can, and thank you for the overhiring authority. The one thing that we'll never do, as you know, is lower our standards to fill a spot. We just believe this is a special place, and only the best should work here, and we're not going to lower our standards to fill a position. We'll find another way to figure that out in terms of services, but I'm not willing to roll the dice on someone that's iffy from another department to put on our uniform and represent our city and causes a bigger headache down the road. You don't want that. We don't want that. And certainly, and probably most importantly, the community deserves the best. So we continue to try to keep it at that level. And I think we've been pretty successful. Yeah.
Mr. Hart, Mr. Francisco, and Mr. Hotchkiss all have questions. So
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, one thing I'm curious about is the chart that shows the entry-level hiring and has, the bar chart that has the blue and the gold bars. Not that one, the other one, the one previous to that. There you go. If you go way back to 2000 through 2009, pre-recession, the number of applicants and the number of folks tested is a small portion of what's currently tested. I see there's a big spike during the recession. People were out of work. They were trying to get jobs. But still, in this environment today where you're having such a hard time, it is double what it was in 2009, 2008. Double the number of people tested even, or actually triple the number of people tested in certain instances. So and without having this go further back, I don't know if the recession was a blip and that was extraordinary and atypical, and now we're in an environment that's more normal. There's a lot of reasons that you described why we're not having success, but the thing that's really troubling is this, officers filled chart that shows this going down to 93%. It sounds like we should expect this to go lower based on the number of retirements, based on the difficulty in terms of this recruiting situation, and the chief's telling us that, we're not going to compromise the standards. I understand that. But you put all those 3 things together, we're going to get to the point where it doesn't work, and there has to be another plan. And I'm not hearing what that other plan is. And so I need something to reassure me that these forces aren't out of control and aren't able to be changed.
One of the things that we've been doing also is there are several academies around the state where people put themselves through an academy. Where we've been looking at those individuals, doing interviews of them. The unfortunate thing is, even with those that come here that look really good in an interview, once we get into the background, which is very in-depth, we end up knowing more about them than they do about themselves sometimes, it comes to a screeching halt. And I think that's so frustrating for us. First of all, to speak just about the patrol folks, we're short in detectives because we have to put people in patrol. Our patrol folks are working so hard. They're chasing the radio. They're working hard. They're working long hours. They are dedicated individuals who continue to do a great job. But they're frustrated, and I see their frustration. I sense it. I hear it. We as a staff are just as frustrated as well. We just can't get these people to get past the background. And, as I've said before, the people in patrol really suffer the most, I think, because of the calls for service and the volume. The volume of calls for service are going up, and we're going to talk about that at the end of our presentation, and we'll tell you why and how we're addressing that. But I think that, Councilman Hart, that's continuing to be the challenge. Our plan is to, again, look at more laterals. That's part of the plan, as the captain said, to do more interviews of people in the academies that are not sponsored, that we might take. And we've done that in the past. Over my 15 years here, we've taken 2 or 3 who put themselves through an academy did well. We interviewed them, and they're still working here and doing a great job. So we're going to look at everything without lowering our standards and doing the best we can. And we're on it, and we're asking our folks to help us with the recruitment. I have some of the cards here I'll leave you later that we're passing out to the community. And again, even when the numbers are high, by the time we get to a background, it's frustrating for our folks in patrol. It's frustrating for Captain Torres when he walks into me with the bad news and says, we just lost 10. This literally, he said that once a few months ago. We just lost 10 in backgrounds that were looking good, or in the psychological, or the physical. And it is very frustrating because we spend a lot of time and a lot of money to get to that point of a background. So I hear what you're saying. We're going to continue to put our nose to the grindstone and just continue to try to come up with other plans. And again, we're making no excuses. This is on me. I'm the chief, and this is on me. And we need to do some better planning, and we're doing the best we can. At the same time, competing with other departments, which doesn't bother us because, unlike the captain, I will say that I have stolen them from other departments during the hiring process because they were so good and we rushed them through the program. They passed everything, and they're out there now doing a great job for our community. So I'm not below doing that, and it's legal because they do the same thing to us. There have been some departments over the last 18 months who find out that one of their candidates is also a candidate with us, and they drop everything to get them hired before I can offer them a job. So we compete. It's like a college recruiting class. We compete with all of these cities for good people because it takes a good person to do this job. And all agencies know that, and we want the best. And we will continue to, like I said, put our nose to the grindstone and come up with better plans for you. But that's on me, and I promise you we'll do that.
Well, I appreciate that. What I think I'm looking for is something real specific, because I think we've been talking about this now, multiple updates in a row, and the trend is not good. So what I'm looking for specifically is a comprehensive plan that says we're going to do X, Y, and Z to get more applicants. We're going to have a target of a certain number of laterals, to benchmark this in a way so we can see specifically where it's falling down and where it needs help. Because it sounds like you're just doing all the above and trying harder, but it's not getting the results. So I think it needs to be a different approach, to be more systematic, more methodical, more organized, more with specific subset goals in order for us to have a better sense of where it's fallen down. Because I think the problem from our standpoint is that we're accountable to the public and you're accountable to the public, and we can't just keep saying we can't get people. There has to be a point where we say, we're going to do something different to get more people.
And we're trying to do something different, and I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just saying we are doing the best we can. We're going to continue to work harder and come up with another comprehensive plan and bring it to you long before my next update to you. I promise you that. And over the last few months, we've lost quite a few to UCSB. Within 30 days or 20 days, they go to UCSB, and they go for a variety of reasons, and that's what they want to do. It's a different style of policing. It's a different pace, and maybe that's what they want. Good people, but they just decide for a variety of reasons to go there, and we've lost a few to them. A few months ago, I lost 4 of my female officers to agencies in Orange County, and those reasons were legit: getting married, more money, and then the other one just wanted to go back home where she grew up, which was in Irvine, who pay very well. But we're not the only ones suffering this. I recently came back from a meeting in Orange County, and every chief in Orange County is mad at the Irvine chief because he's stealing everybody from Orange County. So it's a competition, but I give you my word, we'll come up with something that hopefully will make it a little happier.
Mr. Francisco.
Thanks. Captain Torres, do you have an idea offhand what the percentage of sworn officers is from the area? And if you don't, you could tell me later.
Get that to you. I don't have it offhand.
All right.
Just a little small little snippet profile. Of the 7 we hired, 2 live in South County. The rest live out of the area. Ventura County. Ventura County. So,
okay. Thanks.
And that's typical what we're seeing.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Quick question. What are our actual numbers of people, officers in the street now?
Yeah, we're going to cover that in the patrol section, but the quick answer is 47 on team strength right now. So I'll let Captain Marizita speak to that during his presentation.
47?
47 and team strength, that's right.
What does that mean?
Well, our teams are divided, 6 teams.
If we're going to get into it later, that's fine.
Mr. Rouse?
Captain Torres, if I look at the numbers of applications and people testing, are all the reviews being done by sworn officers? Do we employ an outside agency to help us get through at least the initial triage? How do we do that? It looks pretty labor intensive.
The interview process, is that what
Well,
you
accepting applications, processing applications, bring them down to the point where you're actually going through the process. I mean, with the peak of the 4,500 applications in the course of a year, I can't imagine having the resources within our department that can actually handle that kind of load. So do you use other personnel handle? How do you do that?
That's all primarily handled by city HR. They do all that. We just show up for the testing the day that the applicants show up, and then we get involved at that point.
So city HR takes the initial application in, then they come to you, and then you get involved at some level.
We get involved from the testing process on.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to discuss some of the building issues that we have. As you know, recently we received a complaint. And Cal OSHA showed up, found several areas in the police facility that needed addressing. One of them was in the locker room, and as part of that, we had the locker room we're in the planning phases for making those improvements. I'd like to thank Mr. Casey for putting it up the top of the list, because it was identified in the capital project, but it wasn't set to start till next fiscal year. But Mr. Casey has moved that up with Public Works, and it's a priority. So we're doing a pretty good remodel on that and addressing some of the issues with lead paint and those type of things. So that's in the process of happening right now. Next. Also, another area that had lead and asbestos was the old fitness room. And we're moving into, you see the picture on the left of the old small room that we had there. And the picture to the right is our old communication center that we're converting into our new fitness room. So we're waiting for the equipment to come in. I'd like to thank council for approving the expenditure, Mr. Casey, for that. So that's moving forward. And currently we have construction crews mitigating the old fitness room. We're going to turn that into additional locker room space because we're pretty crowded where we're at. So it's going to be all redone, and they're going to create a locker room space in there and address all the lead paint and abate all the asbestos. I think they've already abated the asbestos. And it's moving forward with that.
So just, again, and sorry if I missed it, the whole Cal OSHA report, there were some correctional items just to clean up, and have they all been taken care of at this point, or are there still some items, and what's the status?
The one last item remaining is with lead abatement in the range. So we're developing a contract with the company to come in and do that now. And then there's one other item remaining. We had an outside restroom facility. It was going to be our decontamination station. And although we added the chemicals that were needed to be in there, we wanted to go above and beyond what's required by OSHA. So we're putting in a kind of a boot washing station or shoe washing station for the officers. So Public Works is working on that project. So temporarily, we're going to be using the fire department's decontamination station until ours is done. And once that's done, everything will be addressed.
Okay. The lead abatement in the range, I imagine, have to do with shooting?
Yes, the shooting range, yes.
Range, so
yes.
The lead, okay.
Yes, we do an annual cleaning, and it's due for its cleaning. So that's...
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we will now have Captain Marizita come to the table. We'll discuss a patrol briefing.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. Captain Marizita from the Patrol Division of the Police Department. And getting right into Council Members Hotchkiss' question on exact numbers for sort of boots on the street, so to speak, I'll kind of run through the numbers from my division, and then we'll kind of pare it down to tell you exactly how many we have on the street right now. Currently in the patrol division, from myself down to the patrol officer level, we have 100 sworn positions in our division. Of those 100 sworn, our patrol teams, which are the ones that sort of handle the majority of the calls for service assignments. If we were fully staffed, we'd have 57 in our patrol teams, and currently we're at 46 in our patrol teams. Of those 100 sworn, 25 of those would be in specialized units, drinking driver team, tactical patrol force, gang suppression, etc., if we were fully staffed, and we're currently at 15 in those positions. So boots on the street, if you could call it that, for just our patrol officers and our specialty units, for our patrol teams is 46, plus our specialized units of extra 15. Currently, we have 21 officers who are down in the patrol division, either due to injuries or vacancies. So that's from 100 actually goes down to 79 if you include all of our patrol teams, all of our specialized units, and all of our supervisors. 13 of those officers are on an injured or other list, so they're not showing up for work. That's a bit high. Usually 8's about our average, and I expect to have about 3 or 4 of those officers back to full duty within a month or so. Current vacancies in our specialized assignments, as I mentioned, we have about 10 vacancies in those assignments right now. 2 of those are in traffic. 1 in our nightlife enforcement team, 2 in our gang suppression team, and our criminal impact team has been suspended at this time, so that's 4 positions that aren't filled there. And we are anticipating, as Captain Torres mentioned, we are anticipating a couple more vacancies due to retirements here in the very, very near future. The graph that you see up there under calls for service and response times shows year-to-date calls for service for the years 2009 through 2015. And when I'll just give you a brief definition of what we consider a call for service. It's not a telephone call into our dispatch center per se. It's any call that generates a police response. So we could have 5 telephone calls into the dispatch center for 1 police response, a traffic collision or something like that. So those numbers represent an actual police officer or a police employee, could be an animal control officer or a CSO, somebody responding to a call for service. You can see that our year-to-date for 2015 compared to our year-to-date for 2014 is higher by about 2,500 calls higher, which is about an 8.6% increase from 2014. And over the course of the previous 6 years, if those numbers are averaged, it's about a 6.6% increase that we've seen in 2015 versus the 6 years prior. And like I said, it's about 2,500 or so more calls for service. And as we analyzed what these calls are and what the majority of them are, to kind of look for patterns to see if we needed to reevaluate where we're staffing, it shows that there's an increase in many different types of call for service, but the one that really sticks out as the greatest increase are just disturbances in general, but then even more specifically, transient-related disturbances. Out of those 2,500 calls year-to-date in 2015, about 400 of those calls are sort of transient-related disturbance calls.
So following up on that, we've been asking business community, the community itself, to call, right? So, I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, it's not necessarily an increase in inappropriate behavior, though it may be, but the increase in calls is because we've been asking people to make the call, where maybe they didn't make the call before. Is that part of what's going on here? Or-
Madam Mayor, it's a very good question. I think you're exactly right. We do suggest people call. We're handing out cards. Our CSOs are handing out cards to let people know to call when there's a problem. So certainly that's due to part of the increase of those calls for service. But each one of those generates, a call for service, and an officer or somebody has to respond to that.
Right. I guess what I want to get a handle on is, has the incident of inappropriate behavior or nuisance behavior risen, or has our response and tolerance, has our tolerance level to inappropriate behavior declined to the point where we're calling more often? It's the cause and effect situation. Because, you could look at the chart and just say, wow, there's a lot more going on in the city. And I don't know if that's accurate or if that's just the community saying, I'm calling because I've been encouraged to call and we're responding. That's why we have the whole CSO program, was for that particular reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it would make sense that you'd have more calls for service because we've been saying that's what we want and that's how we're trying to. And over time, that should hopefully go down because the issue itself should decline. So, I could think that's just, want to put that in context, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a very good observation, and I don't think it's easy to understand exactly what's going on there, because the more tickets we write, it looks like the more crime there is, yet we might be responding to a call for service and writing a ticket. So there's a lot of things that are sort of working within each other there, and it's really a hard thing to get our arms around. I mean, we have looked at the actual number of crimes reported, and we've certainly got statistics for that, and they certainly don't show an increase of this magnitude for those types of crimes. So I think you're right on that a lot of this has to do with more people calling because we're encouraging them to call.
Right, because that's what I kept hearing the last several updates is crime is down.
Correct.
The calls are up. Okay.
Just by way of some anecdotal information, I spoke to our dispatchers to try to understand from their perspective where this call for service spike is coming from, and they offered me an insight that I never would have guessed. And they said that over the last few years, it's more common for some of our homeless people to have cell phones, and as a result, they're actually calling for police services on each other because they're getting in their own problems with each other people. Which it never occurred to me that homeless people now have cell phones and they're actually calling for police services, but it makes sense.
Continuing on with response times, due to our higher number of calls for service and our reduced staffing, we have seen an increase in our response times. Our priority 1 calls, and those would be calls that are serious crimes that are in progress, usually life-threatening or crimes against people. Those numbers remain well within our P3 target of 7 minutes. Our average response time to those calls are 6.4 minutes with a P3 target, as I mentioned, of 7 minutes. And the reason we're really able to keep that number low is we don't get entirely a lot of those calls in a 1-month period, and those are the calls that officers will leave calls that they're on and go to immediately because they're very high, serious calls. So we tend to get police service to those calls very, very quickly. But our priority 2, 3, and 4 calls, those are just other crimes in progress, investigations. Those are the types of calls that we're seeing an increased response time, where our P3 targets are not quite being met right now, anywhere from 1 to 4 minutes, depending on the priority, 1 to 4 minutes over what we'd like to have for a target for those priority calls. So our higher calls for service is somewhat negatively affecting our response times, especially in those priority 2, 3, and 4 areas. Any questions there? Next slide. I wanted to give you a update on our community service officer program.
I guess I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how we rate calls for service in the time. There's probably a police standard for the country. What's our goal? You've stated it in the past, but maybe I need a refresher on it.
As far as response times,
yeah.
Our goal, we work off of a 5-year average for our P3 targets, and it's 7 minutes for a priority 1 call, which is a serious crime in progress, and we're at about 6.4 minutes average on that for this year.
That's from the call coming in to somebody being on site?
Correct. From the first moment that a dispatcher makes a keystroke to the time that the first officer arrives on scene.
Okay. So that they're making that critical decision right there. This has got to go to the top of the list. Somebody get on this right away. Yes,
Depending on what type of call, it automatically gets prioritized. So if it's a stabbing in progress, let's say, it automatically goes to a priority 1 call, and then the dispatcher is able to look at that call as he or she takes the call and make a change to that to either reduce the priority or to raise the priority depending on the circumstances of it.
Does that go out as a priority 1 for everybody to hear and they know they should respond?
Yes, all of our priority 1 calls get dispatched immediately, and if there are no units that are currently available and clear, they get broadcast for any unit to clear, and then we get, typically, we'll get an officer to get moving to the scene immediately, and if not, the protocol is to have our dispatcher get hold of a supervisor to clear an officer off of that lower priority call.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the Community Service Officer Program. Last week, we had 5 community service officers, as pictured up there. This week, we have 4 community service officers. One of them we hired as a police officer entry level. So she is currently in our pre-academy and going to our police academy here. We had anticipated this vacancy, and we started 5 backgrounds a couple of months ago. And as the chief mentioned and Captain Torres mentioned, it's oftentimes difficult to get people through our background process. We had 1 complete that process out of that 5. 2 of those didn't make the background process, and 2 of them dropped out for other jobs. But 1 of them is expected to be hired here in the next few weeks. We do have ongoing recruitment for that position, and we have 23 applicants right now that we are going to be interviewing on October 28th. Currently, we staff those 4 CSOs 7 days a week. The weekdays about 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and on the weekends a little bit later into the evening till about 7 p.m.
Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Captain Marizita, can you talk a little bit about the deployment strategy for the CSOs? Exactly, you just mentioned the hours, but how you disperse them, how many are on at one time, and how they coordinate. I know I see Chuck Reed in the big yellow shirt, and he's obviously working in conjunction with them. Oftentimes, I'll see them working together. What's the pattern, and how does their mission work?
Well, their mission, as you know, is to provide a high level of uniformed visibility downtown, along with a constant and consistent enforcement posture for low-level crimes. We do not schedule them to be in pairs, although oftentimes they work in pairs if they're to make a contact with somebody in order to issue a citation. What we've instructed them to do is to separate themselves and work individually if there are more than one working on a particular shift. However, if they make a contact, some type of enforcement contact, then to have another one come over and stand by while that enforcement contact gets completed, just for safety reasons. They're deployed from about the freeway up to the 1300 block of State Street and 1 block on either side of State Street right now. And I do have some statistics. We have been keeping statistics since the CSOs became qualified to issue citations. And I do have some of those productivity stats. It's a little, we're counting the things that we can count, but there's a lot of things that they do that we can't count. I am getting a lot of good feedback from the community and from council, but I will run through some of the productivity statistics that we are keeping. The citations that they've written, and this would be for a 3-month period starting July 3rd, when they began issuing citations through the end of September. The number of citations was 112. The number of warnings was 1,200. The number of hours worked is just over 1,400. and the number of business contacts is 426. We're also keeping another interesting stat that we thought would be useful, that we have never had to keep for any kind of business that we've done in the past, and that's what we're calling sort of a authority disregarded stat, and that's when a CSO tries to make a contact maybe for a citation and the person walks away or disregards their authority. We have specific instructions on what the CSO is to do in that particular incident, but we haven't found that that's been a huge problem. We've counted 77 of those in 3 months, so less than one a day where that's happening. So that was good news for me. So, the CSO program remains a high priority for the police department. We continue to make small adjustments as we go along. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback, and we'll keep hiring and keep putting them out there.
Great. I see Maggie Campbell from the downtown Santa Barbara here, and just the hours, I know during the week and weekend I can understand being different. I know First Thursday is kind of a separate, special type of thing once a month because there's a lot of people downtown through 8 o'clock and beyond, but don't know if that's come across when you're fully staffed to be able to incorporate that, because it's more like a weekend evening downtown than a typical weekday.
Yes, we can definitely adjust the hours, and like I mentioned, we currently have 4. We're going to be doing 23 more interviews on the 28th, and right now we're going to try to hire 4 more CSOs. We anticipate we're going to have some other salary savings, as you heard, in our department. So we think that we can absorb a lot of those costs, and we think the program's good. It's working really well. It's important to the community. It's important to council, and we're going to get some more of those folks out there, and we can certainly get them to cover some of those later evenings.
Great, thank you.
Okie doke. Next, we'll hear from Captain Altavilla. We'll come in and talk about the investigative division.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Alex Altavilla, captain with the investigative division. One of the trends that we have started to see is the emergence of some of our tagging crews here in Santa Barbara that are becoming a lot more active. Tagging crews tend to be a little bit smaller in size and membership, and from time to time we see some taggers moving from one crew to another, either by changing their moniker or by changing their crew name. Some of the ways that we get vandalism reported to us by taggers is obviously a patrol officer can go out regarding a call for service from the community. They can make an observation on their own as far as an act of vandalism. We get citizen crime reports. They come into the lobby and make those. Online reporting, they can report that way also. And a lot of times our youth service section detectives in my division will go out and identify a specific tagger, and they'll go out on their own and search for unreported situations where we've had vandalism. And they'll go ahead and document those which have actually gone unreported. To give you kind of just an approximation of some of the vandalism we've seen in the last year, since October to October, we've had approximately 786 incidents. The square footage, the way it's mapped out, is about a little over 40,000 square feet. And then using the city's restitution formula, that comes out to about $220,000 worth of damage as far as the tagging crews are committing within the city. One of the strategies that we're using, that we've used with other groups in the city, is from a prosecution perspective, is using 186.2 of the penal 186.22 of the penal code, and we've actually had one arrest. I talked to the DA's office this morning regarding a felony vandalism case where the tagger had prior convictions for vandalism, and we've actually been able to go ahead and file that enhancement, which upon conviction will be, additional time depending on the disposition of that specific case. So I thought it was a very, again, from an enforcement perspective, a very creative way to go about doing that.
Quick question, if I could. Are you saying we've only had one arrest of taggers?
No, sir. We started, since we saw this emergence with tagging crews being more active, we're using an additional strategy of using 186.22 of the Penal Code as an additional enforcement strategy. We've had several over the years arrests of taggers.
Are you going to be talking more about taggers now, or are you moving on to another subject?
I was going to move on to something else unless you have
I've got a
something.
couple of tagging questions, if I could. You said the crews are changing. We've got more activity now. Can you? Are the motives changing for tagging, as far as you can tell?
Not that I'm aware of. Like I said, the groups tend to be smaller in size, and their main goal or main mission is to go ahead and vandalize with their specific mark or their moniker. And they do morph from one group to another, and they do change their tags from time to time.
Is it competitive between groups? Maybe that's an irrelevant question. What ages are we usually talking about? These young folks?
They typically are. In some of the cases that we have, we've got another arrest that we made that has been sent to the DA's office for a 186.22 enhancement, again, is a juvenile. Typically committed by juveniles, but not all juveniles.
And is our strategy still to try to get the tag off the wall or wherever it is as soon as possible so there's no duration to it?
Yeah, we go ahead and work very closely with Public Works, and obviously it's one of those things where as soon as it goes up, our goal is to go ahead and document it, and report it, put it in our graffiti tracker system, and get it down as quickly as we can.
Are you getting citizen cooperation with this? Do people call and say, hey, this just got tagged, this pole or whatever?
Yes, sir. It comes in from a variety of different sources, but we are getting good calls from the community.
Okay, thanks.
Art?
Given the uptick in graffiti, are we resourced enough in Public Works to be able to respond to those to make sure that we get stuff off the out of visibility as fast as possible, or is that starting to back up too? Maybe that's a Paul Casey question.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm...
And find out. Okay, thank you.
And then I wanted to talk a little bit about staffing and caseload as far as the investigative division is concerned. We're currently holding 2 positions vacant in the investigative division to go ahead and assist with patrol team staffing. One is in my crimes against persons unit, and one is in our, they changed the name to SaberCat, which is our Santa Barbara Regional Crime Abatement Team. The vacant position in the crimes against person unit typically handled polygraphs, extraditions, and it had a small caseload. What we've done is we've contracted out in regards to polygraphs, and the bulk of those were pre-employment polygraphs. We do very, very, very few, if any, criminal polygraphs. We spread the extraditions throughout my division depending on the type of crime as far as going and getting these people and bringing them back. And then the caseload for persons has been spread throughout my persons unit. And then in regards to the SaberCat position, we've suspended that position in SaberCat. However, we brought it back to our local narcotics team. However, we still have to assist SaberCat, who is still active in Santa Barbara, and also at times our sheriff's department with staffing needs. And it's interesting because it goes back to, in a lot of cases, the way we used to do narcotics investigations back when actually got to do it. Narcotics really doesn't have any kind of real geographical boundaries. And now, kind of collectively, we're working with SaberCat and the Sheriff's Department, depending on where the cases are. And we've been having a lot of really great success. You've probably seen some of the media releases come out. So I'm very happy with that. But again, that workload hasn't gone away. So we continue to go ahead and work with the other agency in narcotics enforcement. And then as you can see, our caseload assignments over the last 3 years have gone up. And I have a very aggressive case assignment strategy because I think it's important for the community to have these assigned. And I'm really impressed with my sergeants who go through what they call the queue, so to speak, of all the incoming cases every single day, and they're very aggressive in assigning these. And I think right now we're giving a really, really good product to the community, and I'm very impressed with the way our division is working at this point. So.
I have a feeling this is about public works and graffiti abatement. There we go, Ms. Bjork.
Madam Mayor, council members, Rebecca Bjork, Public Works Director. Sorry to disrupt the table. We do have assigned staff for graffiti abatement. I'm not aware that we have a backlog at this time. One thing the community may see, however, particularly along the Union Pacific right-of-way, is that we do that clearance once a week. So it may take us a little longer to get out there because we just do it on a weekly basis. Additionally, graffiti on the freeway is Caltrans' responsibility, and so that also sometimes takes a little longer to get a cleanup response.
Thank you.
Our presentation will now transition to a brief discussion of crime stats. I'd like to start with a discussion of total violent crime. What we see is for the last 3 months, we've had a little uptick in total violent crime, primarily due to aggravated assaults. We'll get more into that in a moment. Our monthly average for the last 5 years has been 34 violent crimes per month, and you can see last month we had 39, which is about a 15% increase. August we had 46, and July 48. August is always a little high due to Fiesta. But this is primarily due to aggravated assaults. As for the year to date, what we're seeing is an 8% increase over the last 5-year average. So we are seeing a little uptick. And if we look at the types of violent crime, what we're seeing is the aggravated assaults are really leading the charge. We have seen a reduction last month in September, basically down to our 5-year average. So we're encouraged by that. But we did see this slight uptick where we are at 36 and 31, which, of course, is above our 5-year average. For June, we were below our 5-year average. So we did see this little spike here. It is coming back down, so we're encouraged by that. Whenever we see these types of spikes, and this was kind of a disturbing trend over several months, we do an analysis to try and find out, is there some root cause, some type of crime which seems to be spiking? And the answer is no. We haven't been able to find a root cause. This is a compilation of all types of violent crime. For example, we've seen slight increases in domestic violence and bar fights and street fights and assaults with transients. Just an overall slight increase. And then when you add them all together, you get this 8 to 15% increase. But again, we are encouraged by the fact that it's come back down. A couple other disturbing trends that I just want to call your attention to is if you look at the rapes per month, it's normally 3 reported rapes a month. For the last 2 months, we've been well above average. We've looked at every one of these, and in virtually every one, we have a suspect who is known to the survivor at the time of the assault. So it is a high likelihood we're going to make arrests on these, and we have made arrests on these. We want to make certain we don't have a serial rapist that's attacking our community, and we don't. In some of these cases, the suspect is related to the victim. These are really all types of sexual assaults, not just forcible rapes, but other types of sexual assaults. So we're a little disturbed by this trend, but we're encouraged by the fact that essentially we've made arrests in every one. Total property crime is actually a little encouraging. If we see the last 3 years, we've had a significant drop. And although year to date is a little higher than we were last year, it's still the second lowest year in the last 7 years. So it's basically an encouraging trend. What we see is compared to our 5-year monthly average, we're 12% below that average. And year-to-date average, we're 8.7% below the average of these other columns here. So generally speaking, property crime is low. We have seen some spikes, which we can discuss in certain areas right here. With our burglaries, all burglaries, last month we reported 44. Which is just about at our 5-year average. You can see that for several months in a row, we were well below our 5-year average. Residential burglaries, 21 being our average. We've been well below the 21 value for quite some time. As a matter of fact, the last time we were above 21 is all the way back to October. So we've been, I'm sorry, here's February. So we've been having a lot of success. We had a little bloom with some residential burglaries in August. We made an arrest on that. It was a prominent arrest. It was in the newspapers. And then right away, our burglary rates returned down to a below average level. So we're confident we arrested the right people on that. Commercial burglaries have popped up a little bit. Our 5-year average is 13, and you can see last month we reported 21 the month before, 9 the month before, 10. So 21 is a significant spike. I had Captain Altavilla do some research to try and find out what exactly was going on. These do seem to be break-in type burglaries. This month seems to have returned to a more normal level, so we weren't exactly sure if we were going to have a continuation in that spike, and it looks like we have not. But we did take notice of that, and we're working those cases aggressively.
Typically, in a commercial burglary, are they taking computers, things like that, inside? Is that the reason for it?
It could be. That would be a little unusual. Sometimes it's food. If it's food and alcohol, we tend to think of it as being either juvenile or transient related. For example, we just had a burglary of one of the theaters, and someone went in and stole a bunch of candy. So those all get logged as commercial burglaries. Also, when someone enters a store with a stolen credit card, that can be a commercial burglary, even though it's not what we typically think of as kind of a rooftop job. Right. So we try to get a feel for, are we having a rash of stolen credit cards in town, or are we having more break-ins? And we did have some more break-ins last month.
Thank you.
Lastly, with burglary theft from vehicles, we had 27 reported last month. Our 5-year average is 38 per month. So you can see we've been well below average for quite some time with our thefts from vehicles. So we're doing a good job there. And arsons are almost always low. They're usually trash can fires and things of that nature. It's pretty unusual to get a home or a business that's been torched in an arson. The fire department is the lead investigative agency on those types of crimes. And then lastly, our other thefts. These can be anything from a stolen shopping cart. And sometimes when we go on a real push to issue a lot of citations when transients are using shopping carts that belong to the grocery stores, we try to get those carts back to the grocery store owner, and sometimes that can cause an uptick. We have seen a little bloom in shoplifting arrests. So we're seeing some young, some of whom are transient types, engaging in shoplifting. But generally speaking, our 5-year average being 119. We reported 110 last month, down significantly from August and July. So our trend right now is in a positive direction, even though we've been monitoring this one for a while. And that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions.
Great. We actually, did you want to say something, Chief?
At the end.
Okay, at the end. We do have a couple of public comment speaker slips. Why don't we do that, and then we'll bring it back. Jason Colbert and then Bonnie Raisin.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon. Afternoon, Mayor and City Council. I just wanted to say, there are good things going on with the police department, but there's some bad things. And I mean, I think we need new leadership. I really do. We've had a lot of problems. There's been, if the chief is alleging that they recruit good people, that might be true, but there's been a lot of officer misconduct. We all know that. If that's the case, things, it's not a perfect world, things happen, but I think we need new leadership. And some of the city council candidates are saying the exact same thing I'm saying. We need new leadership. We need a new police department. That's clear. Public safety should be paramount. It should be number one. It should be no excuses. We need new leadership, and we need to focus on. Our city needs to really just partner. There's ways to to deal with the transients. There's ways to deal with crime. There's good things. Like I said, we need new leadership because the morale's never been lower in the police department. We all know that, and things have got to change because I think we're going to continue to see lawsuits against our city. We're going to continue to see negative things if we don't get new leadership. OSHA inspected the police department recently. Okay, it took a sergeant to do that. Okay, the chief didn't seem to care about that. Okay, he is the chief of police. He should have dealt with that head on. So my point is that if this is going to continue to happen, negative things are going to continue to happen until we get new leadership in our department. And I mean, city, I would hope that you guys would realize this has to happen. I mean, Santa Maria, it's happened in Santa Maria. Lompoc has a zero tolerance for police misconduct. 3 or 4 officers have been let go from there. I lived there for 6 years, but like I said, we really need new leadership in our police department. It's paramount. We need to stop making excuses and stop Band-Aid patching. We need a new police department. That has to happen. That has to happen. Thank you very much.
Bonnie Raisin.
Good afternoon. I came here not expecting. I have never sat through a presentation from the police department, and it was very enlightening. I came here today to compliment the visibility of patrol cars on some of our busy streets lately. I live on Upper Delavina, and I know that the speed limit is just that, a speed limit, which is apparently not known. It's a very, very dangerous street, and people do drive too fast. There was a police car sitting there. I'm not sure the reason, but I thought immediately that it was perhaps to give a speeding ticket. It gave me great heart, and I know that this is a very mundane little comment that I am making, but it's very important. As you know, infrastructure is big on my list, but more than that is the safety issue of our police and fire departments. And with the publicity around the country and probably throughout the world now about law enforcement and about behavior, I just want to compliment the police force in Santa Barbara for doing the very best that I'm sure they are doing. And anytime there's a presence on any street, I feel safe. I had a side mirror ripped off my car because of speeding on Delavina Street. The car was going too fast to get a license plate. And I am not, I do not want to be specific about this. I just want to say that in lieu of some of our precautionary signs regarding speed limits, in lieu of properly marked crosswalks, and then at least I know that there may be a policeman close by. And I want to thank them very much for their presentation and the plight that policing and behavior is around our country today. So kudos to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's back to the council. And Chief, did you want to?
At the end.
Any questions? Sure. Mr. Hart?
Well, I just want to raise the issue I think that's out there that occurred with the Police Officers Association sending out a mailer to the community, raising questions about leadership in the department. I think it unfortunately speaks to a morale issue, and I just want to know and be reassured that the chief has a response to that. And I actually want to hear a response to that because it's very concerning. I think in the context of what we heard about recruitment and retention, there's a potential here where the situation gets to be so difficult for the officers that don't have backup, don't have enough people to help them, that they start to make decisions about making lateral transfers. And I'm worried about that, and I don't hear a sense of urgency about that issue. So I want to hear what the chief has to say about that.
I have a lot to say about that, and I've been waiting for that question for a long time, so I thank you. Morale, we all have challenging days. I think the job of a police officer it's an honorable job. We go into it to serve the community, and but because it's a department of human beings, we have challenging days and frustrating days. Our number one job is to protect this city. Our number one job is to protect our officers. I've been a chief here for 15 years. I've been a chief for 22, and I'm in my 37th year in this business. And nothing is more important than community safety and also police officer safety. And I would never put someone in harm's way. We do have backup. It may not get there as fast as we like, and any chief would want more people. I would love to have more people, but we would never put our officers in harm's way. Morale is a choice. There are days when I come to work and my morale might be a little down because of the things on my plate or maybe something personal. But I will tell you, especially after October 2nd, I'm grateful to be in this beautiful community. But we do have issues here with crime. And we have outstanding folks that work for you and me that are keeping the city safe. But morale is kind of it's a really great discussion because I just think that I would love my folks to every day come to work enthusiastic, and most of them do. And they want to serve their community. But they got to want to do it. It has to be in their heart that day. And that's what I always hope. But I would never put an officer in harm's way. I'm a police officer who just happens to be assigned to the chief's office. But I consider morale something that, in my opinion, you'll probably get different opinions from certain people in my department, that morale is low. I do not believe that morale is low. And the reason I say that is not because I'm there, but because we continue to drop crime. Our officers continue to do great work, and they do it because they have great morale. But I think sometimes when the chief of police makes a decision, three things happen. One group doesn't like me, another group couldn't care less, and one loves me. The only guarantee is the next day when I make another decision, those three groups, they just switch roles. And that happens in any large organization, but especially in public safety. I love my people. I really do. I care about each and every one of them. They know that. And that doesn't mean they're going to agree with everything that I decide on or say. But as long as this city is safe and crime continues to drop, and we continue to try to get more help for them out in the field, I'm going to do that. We have done this in several ways. Number one, our tactical patrol force is still at full strength, but our criminal impact team, I put that sergeant and 4 officers back in patrol because we needed that. I used to have 6 beat coordinators. I have 2 now because I wanted to put people in patrol. We used to have 2 nightlife enforcement downtown. I only have 1. Because patrol and answering that call for service that comes to dispatch is job 1. But in terms of morale, I think sometimes if people are upset at me for whatever reason, maybe they were disciplined, maybe they didn't get promoted, maybe they didn't get a specialty, and their morale is down, don't blame them. I've been there. I've never gotten every job I wanted. I never had the best schedule in my life because when I signed up for this, I knew that was part of it. But I love working for this city, and I believe every single one of my people love working here. But sometimes they just feel a little bit different and maybe a little down. I don't blame them for being frustrated right now because we need more people in patrol. I could do that in the next 5 minutes, but then we wouldn't have beat coordinators. I wouldn't have anyone on State Street. I wouldn't have TPF. I could go back to basics like when I started. It was patrol or detectives. And if I wanted to put 10 people right now in patrol, I could do that very easily. And then next Tuesday, we'll have a line full of people here saying, why don't we have beat coordinators? Why is Casey Butel working patrol and not on State Street? Why do we not have TPF? Who's dealing with the homeless and mentally ill? If I wanted to get 10, 12 officers tomorrow back in patrol to boost morale, it would happen like that. But we have competing priorities in my department. Every department in the city is important, but we're the public safety folks. In terms of morale, I don't know. That is such a debatable thing. I believe that if you work in a city like this with great support, we should be very grateful, and I'm sure they are. But I don't blame them for being frustrated. Sometimes I'm very frustrated when I look at our board and don't have enough people, when I can't cover every neighborhood watch meeting, when I can't cover every restaurant and bar because I only have one person. It's very frustrating. I do not take that lightly. But sometimes people will say that I am taking it lightly, and I'm really not. But they're not sitting in my chair or your chair or the mayor's chair with the competing priorities that we have. I'm very frustrated that I don't have enough people. And I'm saddened that I've got 12 or 14 people hurt. And they got hurt doing this job with great morale. And we could talk about morale all day. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or put, rose-colored glasses. Sometimes people are sad and frustrated. Sometimes the chief of police is also. But it has never deterred my people from doing great work that they do. We are in a facility that is deplorable. And they keep coming to work. It's disgusting. My people deserve a better place. I'll be long retired if there's ever a building here. But that doesn't matter to me. This is Santa Barbara. And as I travel around the state and look at some of the facilities that are out there, it is unbelievable that such a great city does not have one. And it's no one's fault in this room. It's not the POA's fault. It's not my fault. Monies were gone. The community development monies were gone, and it went down. But they continue to do great work. I will always be proud and honored to be a part of this organization, whether they agree with me or not. But we have work to do. And I want my folks to come to work every day wanting to serve their community 100%, no matter who their chief is or their deputy chief or whoever. Morale is a debatable subject, and I believe many times it's a choice. The choice is to serve the community. And I think we need to really continue to inspire and motivate our people to come to work with that in mind, and most do. Some don't. And I think I will tell you I have no more room for negativity in my organization. I'm tired of it. It's about serving this community. It's not about serving the chief of police. And I think that when we talk about morale, we need to look at each other in the mirror and tell each other, today I'm going to serve the city of Santa Barbara 100%. There's very little we could do about things like parking for my employees. That's deplorable. I have people right now, non-sworn and sworn, who park blocks away at night, who have to move their cars every 90 minutes and work in my building. That is unbelievable to me that we can't find spots for them to park. There are so many things that we can encompass in the umbrella of morale, but morale is from the heart. I'm old school. I'm real old school. And I signed up to do one thing, get in that police car, answer the call for service, and give my city 100%. And sometimes people aren't happy with things like that, and there's nothing I can do about that. No incentive, no monetary incentive in most cases, or any new building incentive at all. It comes from the heart. You either want to serve this city or you don't. And I expect 100% compliance. But there are days, Mayor and Council, that I sit at my desk and I'm extremely frustrated, just like my people. But we have a tough job, and it takes special people to do it. And I do not believe that we have such a morale issue that people are leaving just because of that. I've had plenty of people leave because I've disciplined them. Because I've asked them to do something in the right way and they didn't, and I disciplined them and they got mad and left. I can't help that. But we have a high standard in Santa Barbara, and it's going to remain that way long after I'm gone. So in terms of the morale issue, Councilman Hart, I don't see it as a big issue, except for a few that I can count on one hand. And there's nothing I can do about that except to try to be their leader and inspire them. This job is about honor. This is why we do this. It is about honor. And people who have a personal agenda need to find something else to do. Because this is about honor and about serving our community. That's why I signed up 37 years ago, and I'm as enthusiastic today as I was 37 years ago, if you stick to your personal mission. I'm sorry for the soapbox, but I've been waiting a long time to say that, and I believe we need to be positive examples. I am not a perfect chief, and I have not made my last mistake. But I guarantee you this, we have great people in this police department, even those that don't get along with me. They're still great cops doing great things for their community. That's all I ask. I did not sign up to be the chief in Santa Barbara to be popular, but to make a difference. And over the years, with the changes we've made, with the hires we've made, with the tremendous community support that we've received and council support, I've never had a council that didn't support the projects that we're on. Restorative policing, beat coordinators, PAL, the Explorer program. When we can look at our Explorer program that is sending homeless children to camps, and those homeless kids are now in college because of the Explorer program and our PAL program, we need to celebrate that. So in terms of morale, my morale is fine, especially after October 2nd. My morale is great, and I'm going to continue to come to work and give you 100%. And that's all I ask of people. But again, those few that I can count on my hand, I cannot control their personal agendas or how they feel about me or any of you or City Hall. That's on them. All I ask show up to work, put that suit on, because thousands of people would give their left arm to be a cop in Santa Barbara. They really would, to be a police officer, period. Because what we do is about honor. That's my answer to your question.
Well, I guess I appreciate what you're saying, and I, too, share your enthusiasm and support for the officers who are doing this hard work on a daily basis. I think that is the key, and I think that you do have a tremendous workforce doing this despite an increasingly difficult situation with the staffing level. And I think that is a real concern. I don't think that's just a matter of attitude. I think that's an objective reality. And I think that as this number is dipping to this level, 93% staffing level, you're getting to a tipping point where it will be a real morale problem when folks have to work as much as they have to work, aren't able to take time off, and don't have the coverage and don't have the ability to do the specialized work that they want to do. So in terms of job number one, it is getting the staffing levels back up. And you're exactly right. This council and every council, I think, all along has been a strong supporter of giving you the resources necessary to do the work that you need to do. And so there aren't any other levers for us up here.
Right.
We have to have a change in that. I don't know what the answer is. I think it's a matter of working smarter, not necessarily harder. But I think there really needs to be some attention to a plan to turn this around. It can't be acceptable to just have this continue down, despite all the problems that we have with high housing costs, the difficulties of parking, the building, all those things. If necessary, we need a strategy then to start addressing those things, whether it be compensation or parking or our plan to get the building. And we need leadership to help us lead toward that. We need to have aggressive effort toward making things change. So I appreciate, what you're saying, but I think we've been hearing these updates now for quite a long time, and this trend isn't changing in the right direction. So I think that's the challenge to you, is to figure out a way to make that happen.
In terms of, absolutely, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I think, when you look at our numbers going down, that is a morale buster. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm not saying there isn't a morale issue from time to time. I think there's work to be done. Again, going back to what I stated earlier, Mayor and Council, that if it comes to the point in terms of a plan to change how we do policing and take people from specialties back to patrol to make sure that we have that backup, then I'm going to do that, because I am going to set aside a special project team, if you will, to give more backup to the people answering calls for service. I'll never not do that if I have to do that. And that's part of the things that my staff and I are discussing. Where can we start? Before January, we've been having these meetings for months. Where can we start looking at moving people in order to direct that attention to not the morale issue, but the officer safety issue? And if that means less TPF on bikes, if that means no beat coordinators, if that means, and I'm not saying I'm going to do this, then that has to be part of the plan. And what I would do before I would do that is come to you and say, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Because I know you get phone calls and you get requests that the police department should do some other things. I get that. And I'm responsible to Paul and to all of you. And if that's what it takes, then maybe it might take that. And that's part of some of the plan that we're going to put together. It may not be plan A, because restorative policing is important. Our traffic, we don't have enough motors out there right now to deal with traffic issues. All of those things are important. Again, competing priorities. All of them are number one to me. And that might be one of the plans. So, again, that's on me. And I promise you that you're going to see something very soon, long before, so you can get a little taste of what you think we should do. I'm going to give you the platter and say, what do you think? Because we may, if we don't get more people, and we can't even, it's even ludicrous sometimes for me to mention asking you for more people, because I can't even fill the spots that I have right now.
I think we're interested in doing triage and trying to figure out what the best way to use your resources are. That's not our job. But the choice that you have to do triage is the problem. That's the issue. And so we need to figure out a way to arrest that, because it isn't a resource constraint coming from the council. It's not a situation where we're in a recession, we don't have the money. There has to be a better way to figure out how to recruit folks and keep them. And that's what I'm saying needs to be job number one.
It is job one, and it's a tough one, but we are continuing to work on it, and we'll give you more answers to that, because I agree with you. I think we're both talking about the same thing and just getting there as quickly as possible. That's my goal, and that's the goal of my staff. Lastly, in terms of the OSHA issue, I'm glad they showed up. And long ago, Paul Casey and I and Jim Armstrong talked about that building long before anyone told me. And quite frankly, no one ever approached me about that building. But I'm glad OSHA came. I'll give them an officer if they want. But that didn't come from anyone else outside of my office. That came from myself and Jim Armstrong a couple of years ago to address some of these issues. That's why we did the testing. But lastly, unless you have another question, I just want to say thank you to you, to all of you, and to our friends and our neighbors and my staff and many of my officers who came to see us in the hospital, who came to our home. I've never seen so much food delivered to my home in 1 week in my life. And when we talk about morale, there were many officers who have not always agreed with me. They came to my door. They came to the hospital to see my family and I. And I appreciate all of that and your support and my boss's support here to my left and my staff and everyone at the department and my neighbors and friends. My family and I want to thank all of you for your great prayers and thoughts. It was a great feeling. But when we talk about morale and you've got officers that have not always been on your side in many things, show up at your door in tears or at the hospital and bringing me food, and I had officers bringing me flowers and cards and sitting there with me and talking, making sure I was okay. Because at the end of the day, what we do is about honor. Thank you.
Ms. Murillo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Chief, I'm glad you survived your accident.
Thank you.
My prayers were with you, too.
Thank you.
What's emerged for me out of this discussion is the need for a new police station. And we had talked about it, looking at the sales tax measure that didn't go forward. So now we're looking at $80 million of a bond measure. And what that's going to take is building positive community support for our police department. Crime is down. I read the gang crime is down 75%. Let's celebrate that. Let's remind the people that you all deserve a new building. And we have the example of City College's Measure S, which failed, right? They didn't have their finger on the pulse of the people. So this is community work. I'm not laying blame, but I want to take responsibility. And I'd like to say that I think the city administration needs to take responsibility, the police administration, and this council as well. We need to take a leading role in putting a plan in place so that you're appreciated, our civilian workers and uniformed workers there at the headquarters. It's unacceptable that there's asbestos or lead or some of the other concerns. So I'm making a promise to you that I will work on that. And it's just time. The last time we tried a bond measure was 1999, okay? It's time for us to come together and work on that. Maybe it would boost the morale. Maybe our city needs to feel better about policing, community policing, our restorative policing, all of the positives that are going on. And let's turn that into support for a building where you can do better police work, right? Isn't that part of the problem? Space, parking. I'm ashamed to hear that not even your people have a parking spot. What? Okay. I just wanted to let you know that to me, that's what has emerged out of this discussion, out of election season, that people really do care about our police officers. we need to create a plan of action for a new police station. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else? I do think it's not anyone's surprise that we need a new police station. We've been talking about this before even I got on council, when Councilmember Hart was there before. As was mentioned, it was 1999. It's the same police station then. We needed one in 1999. I think that we tried a number of things earlier this year. It didn't happen for this particular year, but that doesn't mean we're done. And, you know, we had $30 million in the bank that the state took after RDA was taken away, and that a lot of that was going to go towards the police station. I think this is more of a capital issue, but it relates to the police department, is as we look towards next year's budget is in the capital program and all the different priorities. I think for the community to realize if we need to raise some other sense of revenue for a police station, that we also need to know what are we putting into the process itself, and not just ask the community entirely for the entire price tag. The Children's Library, amazing example, right? That was a fundraising effort, not a tax effort, but it was still a public-private partnership, and we need another kind of version of that, and we need a plan of what it would take for that particular item. And that's just one item. I mean, I think earlier this year we talked about a number of different infrastructure items, that one just being a very high-ticket one. So that's probably, I mean, I think we need to put that up again at the top of the priority list about how we're going to, what is the plan long-term on bonding, on new revenue source, or whatever it is on that one particular issue, and how much are we putting in play, and then how much what's the gap? I will say, Chief, and I appreciate your comments, as much as, and we know it's a call for service, and number one job absolutely is when you call 911 to get someone right there. I also know that the thought of even taking away the school resources officer will have a room full of people here created next to our education facilities saying, don't get rid of that one school resource officer. If you've changed restorative policing, we'll have a room full of people here saying, don't get rid of restorative policing. It's a balancing act. And I think the council's done its job in creating a budget of the number of officers which are authorized through the budget system. And the issue is there's a gap in what's being authorized in the budget and what we're able to match during the recruitment process. So I agree with what's been said earlier, and I think what you're all trying to do is what is the plan moving forward? And, you know, what is the plan in terms of what can we do in terms of recruitment and meeting that gap? Because once we get to the number that's in the budget, I think a lot of the issues that we're talking about will be resolved because we have the staff power to make it happen. So everyone has their role in this, and I think if we focus on what we can do as opposed to pointing fingers of what hasn't happened yet, we can go a long way, and that's the approach I hope to take as we move forward on these tough issues. So it's good to see you, Chief, and we're glad you're here and you're doing well. So
thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. With that, do you want to take a break, or are we doing all right? Want to just keep going? Keep short? All right, so item number 7.
Introduction of ordinance to permit car share operations on city-owned properties and within the right-of-way, recommending that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara, adding Chapter 10.73 to the Santa Barbara Municipal Code to establish a car share vehicle permit program.
Thank you, Mr. Dayton.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. We're here today to talk to you about car share, and specifically the ordinance required to get there. I want to note that Tava Ostrander from the Attorney's Office and then also our Mobility Coordinator, Peter Brown, have been instrumental in doing this, and they'll be here to answer questions that you might have about car share. The way we're getting here to this place is when we did the general plan update. We did the traffic study. This was a 2011 environmental analysis, showed that that our city, with the incremental growth that we're approving in the next 20-year period, would cause, as the slide shows, significant impacts to our intersections during the peak periods, from the 2008 baseline of approximately 13 intersections to the 2030 horizon of 27 intersections. Those numbers don't add up because some are AM and some are PM, but there's 27 intersections impacted. And so what the council did is to implement some of the mitigation measures to offset some of that impact, created in one case some policies that talk about car share. And car share is one of the elements that our consultant showed that we could actually do some mitigation of the traffic impacts by using that tool. What is car share? Car share is a car rental model. It's where people can rent cars, usually for short periods of times and often by the hour. It's usually done by membership. And the locations that we're looking at doing this would be in the neighborhoods, where usually at the corner, we're thinking at the corner. And how this works and how this would be attractive to someone is usually it's people who are really already using alternative modes of travel, like they're using a bicycle or walking as their primary modes of travel. They're usually closer to the downtown area, and they have a car. And the reason they have a car is because or two, say they have two, and they still need their car to get to Costco or to do errands that require a car. So they're not willing to shed that car, but car share gives them the capability of being in a membership so they can, in fact, shed a car. And what that has a number of benefits. So in our car share objectives, the primary objective is for us to create mitigation for those traffic impacts. And it's an additional demand management tool that we have to decrease congestion. And then also just expand choices, that people have transportation choices for our residents. We have a number of statistics from the Transportation Review Board and also the National Academy of Science, who look at these car share, and they have found that each car share vehicle can displace on average about 15 personally owned vehicles. So once people get in a car share, they actually go, oh, okay, I don't actually have to have the card that I have now. Memberships report a 46% increase in transit usage and drive 40% fewer miles. There's a cost savings of approximately $500 per year for members. And then also another added benefit as it does free up parking spaces and lower parking demand in areas where you have car share, particularly residential parking demand. Where would it be? Where would we put them? We're looking at the initially to be in the downtown area and in the lots in downtown. A lot of people who come here and visit Santa Barbara, they may be a part of a car share already, maybe from Los Angeles. So when they come here, they may come without their car and then use a car share that they're already members with here in Santa Barbara. So that can be a twofold for residents and for visitors. That's why the downtown parking garage locations, we would be determining these locations specifically with the car share company. They will be strategically showing us. But just to give you an idea of places they might pick, what you're looking here is the American Commuter Survey data that shows by census tract the bicycle usage. So the darker colors that you're seeing on the screen are between 10 and 20% bicycling to work. So the areas that are darker would be areas that the car share companies may be interested in putting cars. This is that same information for walking to work. You can see in the downtown area, right adjacent to the core, in the west side of downtown, the strong walking. These are other locations that car share companies may be attracted to because of these existing statistics. We already have car share in the region at UCSB and Isla Vista. You're looking, the picture you see to the right is the Isla Vista on-street parking. Those first two cars are car share. And then at Westmont College, Santa Barbara Airport, you heard last night about Santa Barbara City College just getting a car share too. So to implement, what we need to do is to actually, the mechanism that we're talking about today is the ordinance that would allow us, the city, to lease the space to the private operator, the car share operator, to actually physically lease that space on street or in the lots. Then after the ordinance, we would go and do an RFP process, and then we would come back to council with the selection of a partner and then hopefully launch next year. Just to give you some questions that the ordinance committee have, they asked, interestingly, about Uber and Lyft and if this is affecting car share companies, and the answer is yes. This is an active market that, particularly the millennial generation, not wanting to own a car, but wants to get around. So yes, there is a fight for that market. Car share can provide for that niche. How can neighbors request car share vehicles near their homes? Well, they'd be certainly welcome to contact us at Public Works. But at the end of the day, the strategy is going to be, where are these cars going to be most effective? The car share companies are going to be interested in placing them in such a way that they're gone most of the time. In other words, someone is going to be using that car throughout the day. What if a resident objects to a car share vehicle on his or her part of town? We have to look at that on a case-by-case basis, but also explain the benefits and invite people into the car share if they want to participate in that. And then, can car share companies afford to pay the monthly rate in the city garages? The answer to that is yes. The monthly rate in our city garages is about, if you were to rent a space on a monthly basis, is about $100 to $155. The car share companies will be able to pay that amount. And then, will the program generate revenue for the city, or will it be or not? And it will generate a revenue stream because we're actually going to be leasing the public realm space for their operation. But also, that money will go into the street fund because it'll account for some of the time we're spending shepherding the project. So at least a wash, perhaps a net gain, is what we're going to be able to expect from the program. And with that, we're available for questions.
Thank you. And I don't see any public comment speaker slips. Okay, so it's to the council. Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Day, when you mentioned the parking rates and the parking structures, was there also a rate for street spaces? Was that commensurate with a?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Well, that answered one of my big questions right away. In the staff report, the cities that are using car shares that you use as examples, Santa Monica, Los Angeles, Pasadena, West Hollywood, Berkeley, San Francisco, Sacramento, are all either in or adjacent to major urban areas, which clearly would be a different model than what we have here in Santa Barbara. Now, personally, I think it's not a bad idea to try something like this, but it certainly seems like the data or the statistics used to formulate whether or not this is going to be a successful program would kind of hinge on the fact there's a population density, which we don't really share here. What gives this car company the confidence that they can do this and be financially viable?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, well, we spoke with them directly, a few companies, to see if there's interest. You might recall years ago, companies were interested, but only if the city subsidized for a certain period of time their upstart. And that's why we have not been attracted to it till now. Now they're willing to do it themselves. I think the answer to your question is that Santa Barbara is just different from other communities. Why is the bus company for a city our size number 10 in the nation? Why is cycling in the top 10 in the nation for a city our size? We have the right lay of the land for people to use alternative transportation, and that puts people on that edge where they have the car, but they don't necessarily need it, and the car share will give them the ability to have a little bit more flexibility in how they use transportation, and that could be beneficial to our transportation system.
And then these last two questions, I'll just ask them together. You can answer them together. In the parking structures, they're considered full at 85% capacity. So, for example, if we place a number of car shares within a parking structure, is that with the idea that they'll be month to month, and those might be eliminated if retail people need the 85% capacity, number one? And number two is, in the residential neighborhoods, I would imagine this would be the most effective. Probably some of the most controversial use of those spaces would be among those neighbors. How do we determine within a neighborhood that we're going to assign to the spaces in their block faces to parking? I mean, how do we somehow engage the stakeholders? How would that work?
Councilmember Rouse, on the first question, there are a number of lots that do have capacity. We would look to be month to month. We're not going to, we'll probably negotiate the contract in a way so we have flexibility. So if those garages fill up, that, we have flexibility if we need the space for customers downtown. The point of the car share program is to reduce parking demand. So hopefully the tipping the scale will be less people are coming to Santa Barbara with their cars if that in fact visitor serving is going to be the target for downtown in the garages. If that in fact pans out as a success, then the parking demand should be going down in that arena. As for where to put them, initially we're going to have to really rely on the car share company we partner with to choose that. They know the metrics of their business. But having said that, if it is successful in the areas, and I agree with you, where there's already a lot of on-street parking is probably where it's going to be successful. A lot of folks are using alternative transportation. Their car stays on the street all day long, right? In those areas where car share is successful, then we should see people really embracing that, because then it's probably going to free up parking in those neighborhoods as well. But we have to see that play out. We have to see how that goes. And the great thing about these companies nowadays is they're actually been gobbled up by larger rental car agencies. So their abilities to scale up and down is actually pretty impressive. In other words, they don't have to commit to a certain space for a year and just watch it fail. No, they could change within a month a designation of a space if they're not getting the revenue from it, which means it's not working for anybody.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Yeah, I think Enterprise is one locally that does. I don't know if they do it locally, but they have that ability. They do it elsewhere. Cost of signage, et cetera, on the street, who undertakes that?
That would be the responsibility of the car share partner. We would put that into the contract.
Okay, so there really is no cost to the city at all?
Councilmember Hotchkiss, that's correct. We're trying to avoid costs to the city. There is staff time involved, but we're hoping that we're going to get even that counterbalanced by street front revenue.
Well, I particularly like this because it's totally market-driven, and I think it's a great idea.
Mr. Hart.
Will the specific, when you're done and you've gone through the RFP process and you're ready to do the contract with the company, will you come back with the specific residential parking spaces to council, or is that just going to happen as part of our action?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hart, I think we'll have more information with you on that. Once we start a relationship and really start a back and forth, hopefully we can ask people to put initial proposals in what they think. So I'm hoping that, I can't guarantee it, but I'm hoping we'll have that information for you. It won't be exact probably, but it'll give you a good idea of what the company if we do get that company that wants to partner with us, we're back here, what they want to do and what they want to see.
And I think the signage and having it be appropriate and having it be sign committee reviewed is important rather than just some kind of advertising thing as well.
So I remember when we were looking at this, must have been 8 years ago or somewhere around there, and the thought of, well, we needed to find money to pay for this, and now they're paying us for the opportunity to do it. So market changes. That's pretty incredible in a relatively short period of time. I think technology is a big part of it too, in terms of everyone having a smartphone and being able to reserve space and things like that. I remember when UCSB was starting their process with their FlexCar program, that was a big part of it, was the technology involved. And so very, very exciting. And if it doesn't work, then we just have an ordinance on the books and no one's leasing space and no big whoop, right? So yay for that. That's exciting. No public comment speakers, and Frank Hotchkiss loves it, so life is good, Mr. White.
As good as it gets,
As good as it gets, that's right. Mr. White?
Well, Madam Mayor, it's just as you were saying, it's to have seen this as a project that's going on in big cities, and okay, that's what they get to do over there, and then now, these years later, it's something that can happen in the city of Santa Barbara and is moving forward. It's very exciting to see yet one more piece of our alternative transportation package develop and move forward. And with that, I would move that the council introduce the
Second.
the ordinance.
Okay. Moved by White and second by Murillo. All in-
Seconded first, and then the motion was
Yeah,
made.
right, something like that. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, yep, that's unanimous. All right. Any council member committee assignment reports? Or not? Okay, why don't we move on to item 8?
Conference with City Attorney, pending litigation. The pending litigation is Deborah A. Corral versus City of Santa Barbara and Monica Wickman versus City of Santa Barbara.
Thank you. And we will adjourn from there to Monday, October 19th at 1:30 at 1187 Coast Village Road to look at some trees. Right, okay, thank you.